J-Lo. I am not a rapper. I understand completely that I'm gonna be all right. It's not grammatically correct. But I'm gonna be all right is basically a declaration. A declaration simply says, an explicit statement that says, this is what will be. I can remember as a little girl in elementary, you have to know my mother. You had to have a fever at least 275 before she would allow you to stay at home. This particular day, I was sick as sick could be. I could barely raise my head. My mother said, girl, you're gonna be all right. As I was finally able to convince her, I'm really not all right. One thing about me, I was not an honor roll student, but I had perfect attendance. You have to understand your strengths and weaknesses. And this day would be a day that I could not move. I will not be able to go. So she took me to the doctor. Went to the doctor, and the doctor told me I had strep throat. That day turned into a week. This particular lesson allowed me to understand that I'm going to be all right. Understand your strengths and understand your weaknesses. My strengths were, I had perfect attendance, but the weaknesses were I was not the smartest student. The truth about our lives are, we have strengths and we have weaknesses. You have to highlight the strengths and work on your weaknesses. Time went on, and there are things that become habitual, and you begin to turn your traits onto your children. I was taking my son to elementary school, and as he was going, he said, Mommy, my stomach is hurting so bad. I said, Trenton, if you could just do Mommy this one favor. If you could just act like a man. And go in and just try, because you're going to be all right. He said, yes, ma'am. And he did as well as he could. He sat up, he said, okay. And as I reached back to say, have a good day, Mommy loves you, he close the door, baby, we're gonna go back home. The truth to that point is, sometimes you will not be all right. You acknowledge the fact that I'm not gonna be all right. But eventually, sooner than later, something in my life will change, and I will be. He was out 3 days, not a week, but he eventually was all right. Has there ever been times in your life where you felt, I'm not going to be all right? There are two options when it comes to knowing the truth. Option number one, you lay there and you forget the fact that life has to go on. Or you stand up and you say, I know that this is an issue, but I'm going to make it through. Difficult to understand. Why would a parent allow their child to go to school with 225-degree fever and you're throwing up in your parent's car? It had to be bred from someone's strength. There was a cycle that was happening in my family. In 2006, my grandmother, y'all have heard me talk about Big Mama. Big Mama was diagnosed with cancer, ovarian cancer. 2006, it was so difficult for her. And if you know anything about cancer, cancer gets you to the point and you're taking the treatments and you're going through radiation and chemotherapy. She was to the point where she was so weak. She didn't want to eat. It was difficult to sleep. She lost her strength. As strong as Big Mama was, at this point, it's the weakest that I've ever seen And when there comes a day, sometimes they feel like their appetite is to a point where they're ready to eat, and sometimes they're not. This particular day, my grandmother told my mom, I have a taste for some salmon. That's all I want. As my mother went to fix her and give her her heart's request, she had a baby monitor in the room with her, in the kitchen. She heard my grandmother say, I'm going to be all right. I'm going to be all right. The truth about that statement is she was afraid of death. But it was at that moment she made that statement. I'm going to be all right. She accepted the fact that this is my last. My mom fixed that salmon for her and she was not able to eat it. But what we found peace in knowing is she's going to be all right. The next day, she went from saying, I'm going to be all right trying to eat salmon to not saying anything. Life switches. Sometimes to say I'm going to be all right means I will face my biggest fears. And I will tell my fears that although I know that you're going to be there, I'll face you. I'll say, I'm going to be all right. No, I am not a J-Lo. No, I am not the greatest rapper. But I am Big Mama's granddaughter. And I tell you today, I'm going to be